Merry Christmas, our users. Happy holidays, all that good stuff. Just had a little cherubic Santa Claus sitting in the box. Boy, I don't know if I can handle these jingle bells above my head here. My name's John Kulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, 11-year user of OR for normal, boring statistical applications. But for the majority of that time now, for 8 or 9 years, when I've been doing my R analyses, I've also been executing whatever project I'm focused on, whatever I'm doing those analyses for. There's some broader purpose. I've been executing that broader purpose in terms of documentation from within the same environment that I specify in my R analyses. And so every week I hang out here, and occasionally I'm joined by some people who are interested in structuring their work this same way. And we're just here to promote this way of structuring your work when you're working in a data science application. Probably mostly for people not coming from a computer science background. So I mentioned I'm a psychologist, so I'm anticipating that most people that are going to find usefulness out of this. I got to get rid of the jingle bells over my head. Sorry. Most people that are going to find usefulness here are probably coming from social or behavioral or maybe even management or health sciences kind of background. Because this way of structuring work is not by tradition standard within those disciplines. It should be. And so there's just so many kind of tools and ways in which we can execute this now that weren't available 10 years ago. So there's no reason that this way of structuring work should not be embedded within everybody's workflow if you're doing anything sort of data science-y. We're going to come back to that data science kind of aspect, I think, tonight, because what tonight's focus is going to be is this what's called the next generation IDE that has been developed and is being supported by Posit, the company that gave us RStudio. Now, RStudio is the environment through which most of you, I'm guessing, are using and interacting with R. That's me as well. But Positron's been out there for almost 2 years now in terms of available to not special people, so the public. Um, and we looked at this a few times, but we're going to spend some more time on it tonight. So, in the absence of people asking questions, which is why this is live every week, I want to be here and a resource for people who are, if you're interested in doing this and have any questions whatsoever about doing this, why to do it, or how to get started. I'm here to answer those questions, and I like doing it live. I'd rather kind of do it off the cuff instead of preparing something. And so we use this metaphor of an academic office hour. And literally what we mean by that is if you are curious about something, if you have interest in any of these topics or just want to know more, just literally pop in and ask a question. You can do that by leaving a comment. If you don't get to us live, most people seem to prefer to access these after the live portion. But if you just want to leave a comment on the video, I should be able to get that as well. But in the absence of direct questions, what we've been doing is we've been taking a look at kind of focused features of crafting your work this way. And we've also been following the alphabet, so we're up to the letter P. Now, we've tarried a bit on the letter P because last week we looked at Prisma diagrams. This week we're looking at Positron, this different environment within which we can kind of script and specify our analyses and also our documentation. Um, I, we might extend this one more week because it turns out that I don't even know how I stumbled across this. I didn't know this prior to this week, but the preferred environment to interact with Julia, a language that we, a few probably months ago now, first took a look at. The environment that's preferred to interact with Julia is called Pluto, which also starts with the letter P. And it has a cartoon tie-in, which obviously means that I'm going to be kind of interested in it, just inherently. So we might be stuck on P for one more week after this week, but tonight's going to be fun. I'm not going to, this isn't a tutorial, this isn't a how to use Positron, but I'm going to show you how I've kind of been experiencing it. And I'll also give you quite a few resources that I've found helpful. There's some that I've found not so helpful, and others that I have found helpful, and I'll certainly share those with all of you. The slides are available. They have hyperlinks to all of the resources that we're going to talk about, and those are available in the comments. Again, if you get to this too early and the comments aren't yet populated, look in the description of the video, and you should have a link to this week's slides as well. The URL for those weekly slides is going to be changing once we hit January, so I'm going to have to find a new hosting solution. And I was thinking today, I'm not even sure I'm going to do it. I don't know if anyone accesses those slides. I haven't heard from anyone. So I like putting them together, but in terms of hosting them, I guess I'm not sure if it's only worthwhile if people access them. So I don't know. If you use them, let me know, because then I'll try to find a different hosting solution. There is also a link to a tutorial that is just these types of slides, but it walks you through how to create your own report template. Now, the content of that report is specific to stuff that I do, so psychological measurement, it's called psychometrics, but that doesn't matter. The report template is general enough where you should be able to slide in whatever content you're interested in reproducing. It just walks you through and gives you copyable and pastable code chunks and specifications. The entire document is there for you to paste and get started and kind of see what some of these capabilities are. So that's in the comments as well. And then again, I'll leave this on for a few more weeks, but there's a note here on this second slide to a really nice resource that the philosophy is very consistent with what we're doing weekly in terms of, hey, you might want to structure your work this way. If you're doing these analyses anyway in an environment like our studio or Positron or Jupyter Lab, we've talked about that, why not, instead of just doing the analysis, why not also do your documentation? And why not make it super pretty and publication worthy and publication ready, which is what Quarto does. So Quarto has been great for that. This symbol here that you see, this kind of looks like you're looking through the scope of a rifle. Sorry, Posit. But that scope kind of four quadrant icon is the symbol for Quarto, the software that we've been having a lot of fun with. The slides that you're looking at, they're always Quarto facilitated. So let's talk, before we get to Positron, let's talk about what happened last week. And of course, we need our transition if we're going to do that. So where are you at, Boris?
Well, it looked for a while as if our friends had gained some advantage in the Battle of the Moon Mice. Bullwinkle's singing...
Singing!
Had attracted thousands of the fearsome metal-munching monsters.
Then he wouldn't buy me a bow wow.
But he had immediate competition in the form of the leader of the Moon Mice, the Big Cheese, who seized a balalaika and sang some songs of his own.
Rockabilly like oh, oh, oh.
Pick it up, darling. They're coming this way.
Yet in the morning, yet in the noon, yet in the night time, moon, moon, moon. Oh, oh.
Darling,
Yes, Nitish.
when you sing like that, why do you go ooh, ooh, ah, ah?
Why else? I get sick.
Well, here they come. You ready to sign autographs?
You said it, Nitish. Okay, you lucky rats. Step right up and... Oh, boy. You don't want my autograph.
Darling, I think they want you.
Sure enough, the disguised Boris was hustled off by the furious Moon Mice, and a moment later found himself in a nearby duck pond up to his neck in trouble.
And water.
The angry Moon Mice might have finished our story right there if a strange sound hadn't come through the air.
I take more notes on these weekly Rocky and Bullwinkle sessions than I do reading like a scientific article. I don't know why I don't notice this when I'm cutting those up, but the instrument that Boris played is called a balalaika. I've never in my life heard of that. I enjoy music, who doesn't? But I've never heard of a balalaika, so I'm going to be looking that up after the stream. That's what I got going on tonight. I'm going to look up what a balalaika is. So last week we took a look at these Prisma flow diagrams, and there's a couple of resources on here if you're interested in kind of a little more background on what that is. But it's a consortium. It's a acronym, obviously, Prisma, and what that acronym stands for, you can actually find if you follow some of these hyperlinks. The title hyperlink, I guess, goes not where I thought it did, but it goes to a source article that describes the package that we used. The image itself, if you look at the Prisma, if you click on the Prisma image, it will tell you what the acronym stands for: Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analyses. And really what this is it's a it's a series of recommendations in terms of what you should include in a systematic review. Now, typically these systematic reviews are qualitative summaries of a literature base. And in addition to just kind of here's what to include in your abstract, and here's what to include in your introduction, and here's what to include in the summary or discussion, they also have a recommendation in terms of a visual representation of the process you went through to identify the articles that did make it and didn't make it into your systematic review. And so collectively, those are those are represented within something called a Prisma flow diagram. And so what we did last week was we played with a Shiny app, and then we also installed and ran the functions from that Shiny app that we can embed directly within our documents. So we don't have to go back and forth with the Shiny app. We can just run our script as we normally would, and we get a nice Prisma diagram if we do that. So what I did here this week, and so if you haven't been using these slides, this would be a good week to use them, because I do have salvageable code chunks for an HTML report, for a typist report, or for a PDF. And we'll spend a little bit of time on these. The package authors, they kind of envision these Prisma diagrams being more powerful if they have interactive components to them. And so really they're thinking that people are probably going to use these in an HTML kind of product type. That's where it's going to end up. Of course, as we're crafting things like papers, the HTML type is probably less likely than something like a PDF or a Word document. We haven't been covering Word documents on these weekly sessions. I don't have Microsoft Office, so we could if anyone asked, but absent someone asking, it's not a document type that I'm really all that interested in trying to replicate. Now, one of the things I did this week, and I'm just seeing, I didn't look at this. I didn't look at this annotation here that I have this note on the code chunk itself. But the squiggly brackets, they're usually we refer to these as curly brackets, but they're really squiggly. They're extremely squiggly with the new font that I chose. I decided that when I'm calling something out specifically in terms of formatting here in a code block, in an inline code block, I decided to kind of play with how that looks. And I forget what font I chose, but man, I didn't realize that the curly brackets would actually be squiggly brackets. It looks like two dancing worms to the left and right of Fig Prisma there. But so in terms of how I'm recommending, or in terms of me providing something that might help people who are including Prisma flow diagrams in their documents, I think you probably want to go to this tab if you are rendering to an HTML document. But this scripting will also work for HTML, and this scripting will also work for HTML. So these tabs, kind of the way that these tabs are structured, this first one only works for HTML, the second one works for typist and HTML documents, and the third one works for HTML typist and PDF documents. And I'm going to talk a little bit. There's not actually all that much difference between them, but I'll talk through that with you. I guess one difference across those tabs is how I'm recommending you specify the captioning of your figure itself, and you can do that here within the code chunk itself if you're generating an HTML file the way that I'm recommending. And the other ways, I don't think I have those. Yeah, the other ways I don't have them in there. So you're going to want a different structure. And that different structure is going to be actually indicated here on the right hand adjacent portion to the code itself. It's been so. I did these really early last week, so it's been a while since I looked at these. I got to kind of revisit what I did myself. In terms of the structure of the code chunk, you do want to load that library. You are going to want to install the package. You can get it from CRAN, the Prisma 2020. But then I have the package callout itself in there for you. The way in which I'm recommending you complete your flow diagram is to use a template CSV that comes with the package. And so this command itself should grab the data and should be fine. There is a there is an alternative to this, but that alternative is not consistent with this concept of scripting everything and everything just being available right here. So I think this is the smoothest, most efficient way to actually go ahead and use what I'm recommending and the structure that I'm recommending to complete your Prisma flow diagram. The other thing I did was I excluded the previous study arm of the Prisma flow diagram, and I also excluded the non-traditional sources for materials arm, because those are, in my opinion, those look to be a little more supplementary and not central to what our expectation is with the Prisma flow diagram. And this, I just didn't want this thing to be too big, but you should be able to follow my structure here. And actually, if you wanted to expand it, you could. Maybe what I'll do, let's do this. Let me actually copy this code chunk and let's put it in. Let's put it into a Quarto document and just see if it works. So again, I'm going to just render it, and I'm going to put it on my desktop because I don't want to clutter the repository that I use for these weekly sessions. Poor Casey, we keep overwriting Casey. He needs to show up and kind of defend his valor with our overwriting of his QMD. I don't ask me why it's called Casey. It's been overwritten too many times, so I don't even remember what the original was. I'm just gonna put it at the bottom here. Should be able to literally just paste straight from my files from the slides, and hopefully it works for me. If it doesn't work for me, I can't expect it to work for you, right? Oh, there we go. So there's your Prisma flow diagram. And then there's also the figure caption and the figure numbering. If we wanted to call that out, we could call it out by just saying C at fig Prisma. And maybe I'll leave this open and I'll show you the typist and the PDFs as well. Where is it? Oh, there it is. It kind of put it toward the end. I was looking on the left, but it put it on the right. So it automatically numbers that package. You can see the scripting here. The script, this is just an echo of the code, but it's maybe a little easier to see in the rendered document than it was in the QMD itself. But I've made different sections for the three main vertical components of your Prisma flow diagram. And then I tried to be as descriptive as possible in terms of being helpful for the information that you want to enter. So there's databases, registers, duplicates, and then there's some optional information. These you need to actually interact with the function itself in order to get these to display. So if we look at the diagram that's currently being rendered, I don't have a reason for exclusion, and I don't have specific databases or registers. Now that's something you might want to include. If you look at the actual command for this diagram itself, I put a couple of toggles in here. So the previous and other are those left hand and right hand what I'm calling extra visuals. But the specific databases and specific registers and excluded reports, I guess I probably should have put that in as well. I guess I didn't put the toggle in for excluded reports. Let's do a quick toggle on the databases and registers so you can see what that looks like. So if I were to just change these from false to true, then when it says the databases will actually have some specific databases identified, and you do that within the code chunk itself as well. And there you see I just put in a couple of just kind of stand-in databases that I'm familiar with. PsycInfo, I don't even know if PsycInfo is still a thing, but for years PsycInfo was kind of the go-to database for psychologists. Okay, so that's the HTML specification. That's one way to get Prisma flow diagrams within your HTML documents. Is my music too loud tonight? It feels like it's a little louder than normal, so I wonder if that's coming through in an annoying sense. Turn it down a little bit. So the other two code specifications, again, the package authors, they seem to be most interested in the interactive capabilities of these, and so they're hoping that people use these in an HTML type product. The way in which I thought we could probably work around that for typist and PDF documents is to save the plot itself, or save the image itself as a plot or as a figure or as an object. And then they have a function within their package that's called Prisma Save, and you can save this visual as all kinds of different image types. Now, the reason I have a typist and a PDF is because I love SVG image types. They maintain their crispness. They maintain kind of their just sharpness at different levels of zooming. And so they're just great. And so there's an overcomable problem in trying to render a PDF using an SVG image type. So that's why I have typist separated from PDF. So with the PDF, traditional PDF, my recommendation is just to switch the file type itself from an SVG to a different one, and PNG is going to be fine for most people. Now there's an additional caveat here on including what I've scripted in your documents. If you want to include a Prisma flow diagram in, for example, a systematic review. And that is this overwrite argument that the Prisma save function from this package has. And so this, I don't know if it was user error, usually is, it's usually user error, but sometimes with packages, it can actually be a package quirk as well. If it's base R, 99.9% of the time it's user error. With packages, there's more tolerance there in terms of it could be something with the package. So if you get any sort of weird codes off of taking this chunk and putting it within your typist document, you may need to play a little bit with that overwrite. And one way around that is just to comment this out. Once it's been initially rendered, you can change the file name to, instead of Prisma, to Prisma 2 or something. It gets a little unwieldy and cluttery, but hopefully, let's just see if it works. I gotta keep toggling back and forth between, I should have just kept it in this doggone repository. That would have been the smart thing to do. So I'm gonna take out my previous chunk. I'm gonna put in this new one. And then if I want to call out that image within my document, I can do that by using this specification here. And that specification, there's different ways to do this. We talked about this last week. But the image itself, you're going to want to call it whatever you call it here. Now, the one thing I did which was not smart is I should have actually done this in a project folder, and we'll come back to this when we get to Positron, but it may have a hard time finding prisma.svg because I don't even know where I am. Where am I here? Yeah, it's not going to find it because my script is in a different space, or we'll see if it does. But I think my script is in a different, the files themselves are being placed in a different location. Oh, it looks like it grabbed it okay. So it actually did grab it. And so again, the nice thing about this is it's an SVG file format, and you can just blow it up as much as you want, and it's just going to look fantastic. Looks great. Love it, love it, love it. And if we wanted to do a PDF, again, the same process. It's just you're going to take the chunk from the PDF tab instead. And as I said, the PDF script specification will work in typist and HTML document types. The only thing I really did different here was I just changed it from that really desirable SVG image type to just a normal PNG. PNGs are fine too, but we could get the SVG to render within a PDF, traditionally specified PDF document, but we need an add-on. This is one workaround, so there's generally multiple types of workarounds. If you're interested in that, you can follow this hyperlink, and it takes you to a GitHub discussion that shows you how to actually get around that if you really, really, really wanted an SVG image included within your tech-generated PDF document. You know, it's good that I'm using these specific technical terms, because I think that's one of the issues that we're going to see when we get to Positron is kind of the learning curve on that IDE has some obstacles to it, just I think in terms of vocabulary and terms that are used. So tonight's going to be a jargony night. Not very seasonal, I guess, but it'd be better if it was jingly than jargony, I think. That would be more holiday-like. Let's see if I can tolerate my Christmas thing here again. There we go. Feel like I'm going to get hit. So tonight what we're going to do is we're going to see, we're going to take a look at Positron, this what's called new generation or next generation IDE that is developed and supported by Positron. I'm sorry, by Posit, the company that gave us our studio. Now Posit, the company itself, it was called our studio for a long, long time. And the speculation when they rebranded was that probably moving away from this kind of assumed association with R, the language itself. And Positron certainly seems consistent with this. So Positron does care to a certain extent currently what language you're using, but it's equally accessible for R users and Python users. Now, there's all kinds of tutorials that are out there on YouTube, so that's the main place I looked for tutorials. And the most helpful ones were the ones that were not authored or created by Posit. So I do have some Posit videos here. They're in the footnote, so they're on the bottom here. So there's 3 of them that I found. The Posit architects, the people that developed this, they're probably the most knowledgeable about this. I was reminded when I was watching these of my teacher evaluations. They frequently came back and they said he talks over our heads a little bit. They didn't say a little bit. I guess I'm saying a little bit. But he has a tendency to talk over our heads. And so, you don't know how to take that as a professor. You're like, well, there's some validity to it. Over the course of years, I initially I was like, well, the students need to buck up. This is college and sometimes graduate coursework, and they just they need to get up to speed themselves. It's on them. And then it was consistent enough where I was like, okay, there probably is something to this, and maybe I'm just so comfortable with the content. I know it well, and so it's difficult to kind of put yourself in the place of someone that's not just in it so much. So the Posit tutorials I had, and it's probably some projection from my own personal experience, um, but I definitely had that feeling. Like their discussions were over my head, jargony. I think they know it too well, so they're probably just in it too much. There are what I did find helpful were the I don't want to say people like me, but users who are out there and willing to kind of just say, hey, this is how I've been using it, and this is what I think about it. And there's a hyperlink here to, I followed her channel. I forget who it is, but it's like geospatial or something. What is her name? This is the only thing I've seen from her, so I don't know if it's something that you might want to. Oh my goodness, it's going in the background now. I can't find it. Ah, stop, stop, lady, stop talking. Um, but I liked her tutorial because she made some mistakes and she's like going forward and backward and she's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And that's part of what I'm gonna do here tonight too, is just kind of show you some of the maybe non-intuitive aspects of interacting with Positron. And then there's a link as well in this in the first column header, the tutorial. So the actual tutorial and the YouTube icon, those will take you to this guy. And this guy, I've seen his name oops, sorry, Albert. That's not a very attractive or flattering look. There we go. So Albert has a fantastic overview of Positron. This helped me a lot. And this not only helped me, but this encouraged me. So my experience with Positron has been very frustrating and mostly negative. Um, and I was not at all thrilled about revisiting it until I watched his video, and his video was very helpful. It it hit exactly the elements that I wasn't responding to, and he gives you ways in which to moderate your environment such that it's maybe a little better for you. So I very much encourage people, if you're interested in Positron, watch that tutorial by Albert. It's fantastic. It's about 15 minutes, very painless, and I think he talks at a level that speaks to me a little better as a social scientist. Again, the Posit ones, I think they're just a little too deep in the architecture and the development of it, and the they weren't speaking my language. So there's also a white paper that Positron put out that explains the IDE a little bit. There's so many different resources out there explaining what Positron is and how you can use it and why you might want to use it and some of its capabilities. So again, just this week's slides, there's kind of some curated ones for me. I would definitely recommend the Albert Wrap tutorial. So definitely go and visit that and be encouraged by the customizability that you can apply to your Positron experience. Okay, so enough about what other people have looked at. Let's actually, do I want to save anything? I don't think so. Let's actually look at it. So there's links in this week's slides as well to kind of how to access it and install it. Generally, and again, this is not a tutorial. I'm not an expert in this. I'm not even a prominent user of this. I've just been messing with it primarily for the last week here, and I haven't done a lot of coding in the last week or so. So one thing that if you're coming in fresh, you will have some options in terms of walkthroughs, and I think that's smart. It's very smart by Posit. Um, the I've gone. You can see. I think this is probably a status bar. So I've gone through a couple of these. Um, but one of my frustrations with this, one of the reasons I've had such a difficult time with Positron, I think was kind of self-inflicted. So I have. It's claustrophobic. So it's just there's too much and not enough space. And so, again, that Albert Rapp video walks you through how to mitigate that. But the other thing that I did, which wasn't smart on my part, is I have I have RStudio as well as Positron because the last time I used it was on one of these weekly sessions. I have the fonts blown up so you can see them a little better. So I think if I were to, if I were to go away from old man mode, then it's a lot more tolerable. So this to me is a little easier to deal with. It's probably going to be more difficult for you to see. So I'm going to put it back to what I don't like. But I think it's important to acknowledge as, I don't want to pan this thing. It's important because the people that are putting it together are very capable. Um, but I think part of my frustration with it is self-imposed, just because everything's so blown up, and so I'm not going to be able to. If I were to give this a fair shake, I would have to make that smaller. Um, but because you're here, I don't want to do that. Um, so I mentioned that Positron currently is intended to be an IDE for either R or Python. There's a couple of different, and I have Python installed on this computer as well as R. I usually use R. I very rarely use Python, um, but it's there if you actually want to use it. And you can have either one of these operative. What's going to happen is you're going to see the console. So the console is in the lower left-hand pane here. So you're going to see the console shift from R to Python. Now there's some delay on here as well, and that's something that I've noticed. So you can actually in the interactive console, you can type your Python commands or your R commands. There's a secondary piece of feedback from the interpreter session here in the upper right down to this next tier console place where you can also toggle between Python and R. Now these aren't both active, it's just one of them is going to be active, but you can really switch back and forth really quickly on these. Um, I don't know if you can see, but some of the claustrophobia is now kind of showing up here in my scripting area. Now, there's another way to mitigate some of that, and if I go up to the upper right, there are some options in terms of how to lay out your space. And I think if I were to use this more frequently, what I would do is I would probably choose a layout kind of like this with the console on the right and then the scripting area on the left. And this can be all sorts of different things, but we're going to open things like .r files here. We're going to open things like QMD files. We can do an IPyNB file here as well. Those are the notebooks, Jupyter Lab notebooks that come from the IPython tradition. Now, the one of the things that Positron does that's different from RStudio is I've really over the course of the last probably 4 or 5 years, maybe more than that, I've really loved working within project directories, and so almost everything I do is located within a project directory, and so accessing that directory usually takes a little bit of time to spool up, but all your files are here, and so if you want to do something like access data, you don't need to specify the local path on your machine, and it's hugely kind of powerful. And so these project folders are super helpful for structuring your work. And so there is something in here called an rproj file. And so those rproj files in RStudio are how your projects are identified. They no longer exist within Positron. So Positron, they 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 kind of go back and forth. So they're mostly are referring to these project directories as folders, but they sometimes kind of slip and use that project terminology as well. So I think what I'm going to do for tonight is let's just do a new folder. I don't know what template actually means. We want to do, again, there you see kind of the three primary, they call them visual interfaces, I think. So there's a kind of Python view, there's the R view, and then there's the notebook view. We're going to take the R project. It's going to walk us through this wizard. Let's call this, what do we want to call it? Playing with Positron. And then in terms of location, that's an okay location for me. I think I am connected to GitHub, and so I kind of have a way of structuring things locally when I'm also sharing things online with GitHub. But I don't think we're going to talk about that tonight. That would have some consequence for me just in terms of me remembering where I keep it locally if I were going to connect to a Git repository, but we're not going to do that. So select the version of R. This is very Jupyter-like. So it's very Anaconda-like, I should say. So this reminds me of kind of setting up your environment, which is not something that we would typically do as typical R users. And then it gives you an option of do you want to open it up in the current window, which should refresh everything I have, that's fine. Or do you want a new window? Let's just try current. And then it gives me some default information. There's a untitled file. I think the expectation here is that this is going to be an R script. Okay, so I'm starting to see some of the elements that I'm not so keen on from a user experience perspective. My immediate reaction to Positron was that it's just overwhelming. There's too much. It's like a cacophony of utility, if that makes any sense. So it's noisy. It's noisy with functionality. There's like so much you can do that there's too much you can do. It's just like a social or behavioral science graduate student. I think even at the PhD level, I don't see how given its current kind of appearance, I don't know how this would. Well, I know how it would be received, and it wouldn't be received well. It's just it's too much. So, one of the things that Albert video does is it gives some options in terms of theming. I have my theme set such that the color it's like a dark mode, right? You see that? But that's kind of inconsequential. The thing that's more consequential is just the sheer kind of overwhelmingness of the things that you can do. It's all just kind of in your face. And the Albert rap video really walks you through how to change that. Now they also have some options. They have some options that are kind of preset for that. They have something called Zen mode. And so Zen mode really kind of simplifies things. And this, this is a little too much in the other direction. So this is something that I appreciate. But it's also something that could probably use kind of a undo on it. It's something that could use a little customization. So Zen mode, that's great, but but I probably want something intermediate, so something that's not quite so overwhelming as the standard view, but that actually is, um, boy, I'm getting. So one of the other things that I've really been challenged with Positron is just the interactivity, getting it to do what I think I want it to do. And so there is something called a command palette that everyone that uses this says is like kind of the way to interact with Positron, and they love its utility and its functionality. You The recommendation within Positron is to kind of rely on keyboard shortcuts, and that's kind of a coding. That's a tradition in coding. They coders love keyboard shortcuts, and so you can access that command palette by hitting Control Shift P. Now I'm enough of a novice and a noob here on this and you see some of those the shortcuts. You see them next to functions that are capabilities that are possible here within Positron. Um, I have had quite a bit of confusion on the command palette versus the search bar because they look very, very similar, but they have different functionality and they show up in the same location. Now, the other thing that I've kind of done is as I've been scrolling through, I've accidentally hit something and just things change, and I'm like, "Oops, I don't, I didn't want to do that." So the command palette is recommended to interact with Positron, but just beware. And I actually did a AI search on this because I was wondering if it was just me or if other people have issues with this, and it might just be me. So Grok said that no one seems to have any sort of confusion between the command palette and the search bar. I do. Maybe it's just location. I don't know. But so the playing around and getting it to do what you want it to do is probably going to take some trial and error. Like I said, there are a lot of help. There are a lot of guides out there, but it's just nothing works as well as just simple trial and error. For example, just hitting these sidebar icons twice to get rid of them, once to access, twice to get rid of. That took me an unreasonable amount of time just to kind of figure it out. So navigation is kind of the main thing that I'm not yet comfortable with. I'm very, very curious who Positron's target audience is on this, because it really feels more computery, I guess I don't know the best term for that, but as I mentioned, this isn't something that's going to be immediately accessible to social and behavioral science students. So I'm curious who their market is. I did some thinking about this. I'm very, very hopeful that and I don't know anybody at Posit, but because Posit is differently structured, it's something called a public benefit corporation. There aren't very many public benefit corporations. As a matter of fact, I had to do some research to find out what that entails. Not every state, I'm here in America, not every state apparently recognizes those. I don't know what state Posit is incorporated within. But the fact that it's a public benefit corporation, I was kind of thinking, I'm hopeful that maybe Posit's orientation on this wasn't necessarily market driven, but it was, we are subject matter experts. We know data science, and they do. And we're going to take our knowledge and experience, and we're going to build what we think people should be using. And I very much hope that's the case. If that is the case, I would adopt it. They have enough trust built up with people like me. They have enough trust built up that if they said, we built this because we think this is the way people ought to be doing data science, I would drop our studio and adopt this tomorrow. But I'm not sure. I don't know if that's the case or not. So I would love to know that. So is this market driven in like a traditional capitalist sense, in terms of this is kind of a need that we see, or it's something that the market is wanting or calling out for? Or alternatively, is this what we think, is this how we think people should be interacting with data science? Because if that's the case, then I'm jumping on board. Um, if not, I don't know. If not, I don't know. So there are a lot of capabilities here. I'm gonna go through in just a second. We'll create some data and play with it a little bit. Maybe create a document. Um, the one of the things that became kind of apparent to me as I was watching videos and playing with it myself is that the AI integration is probably one of the features that makes this kind of more enticing, and I'm guessing that the way this works and looks in a year might be quite different. Part of that has to do with the AI integration. There's something called Positron Assistant, and that can be powered by different AI agents. I think Claude is probably the most popular on that, so you would need to have your own subscription. You can connect to GitHub Copilot as well. GitHub Copilot, the last I looked into it, the it was enabled for inline code completion, but maybe not other sorts of ways that people might interact with AIs, like back and forths and chats and things like that. So that's certainly, I'm sure, going to be evolving over the course of Positron's existence. Um, okay, so if someone has a question, drop it in there, and I can try to answer it. Otherwise, I think we'll just play with it a little bit. So I don't think I even have a file open here. So let's just do a normal R file. You can see I actually have GitHub Copilot enabled in here, because when Diego and I were first looking at Positron, we were interested in AI assistance. And so we took a look at GitHub Copilot. We also took a look at an extension called SuperMaven. Now that's the other kind of aspect of Positron that people really seem to like, is its extensibility. So in terms of personalization, in terms of capabilities, there are all kinds of extensions that you can add, and those extensions will facilitate different things, so depending on what the extension is intended for. Quarto now comes bundled with Positron. So if you just install Positron now, you're going to have the Quarto extension on there. So you're going to have some functionality related to the types of things we talk about weekly. I'm not sure why I have a problems panel here instead of, oh, because my console is up on the right now. Again, I'm just kind of starting to play with what I might like for these different layouts. The normal 4-pane RStudio layout, I probably would tend to be attracted to, if not for the kind of, again, the kind of, just, it seems cluttered, so it seems a little claustrophobic. So I don't want more. I want less. So let's see if we can play with data a little bit here. I'm gonna, instead of an R file, let's create, no, there should be all different types of files. At some point, where was it? At some point, I saw this just massive list of types of files. It was impressive. There were so many of them. But I'm going to create a data file here. So let's not do that. I don't need to create it. Let's load in a data file. So I'm going to load in the psych package, and we'll deal with a large data set that comes bundled in the psych package. Now, one thing that I've learned with Positron, and it goes against kind of my natural proclivities, is to be patient. You have to be patient with it, because some of the neat features, the capabilities that it has that are built in that I'm sure if I used this a lot, I would come to appreciate, kind of have a little delay moment to them. So where your cursor is, if you just kind of let it hover for a little bit, you you're going to, maybe it's the mouse. You're going to frequently see more information that's kind of hidden. So here, the function library, it's telling me what it actually does. That's fantastic. The psych package, now it went away and I'm not sure how to get it back, but I think if I probably hit F2 while I'm there, F1 maybe. Okay. But just hovering over something oftentimes gives you some feedback that you're like, oh, I didn't know I wanted that, but I appreciate that. That's nice. The shortcut keys that worked within RStudio, there's a method to make sure to port all of those over, because I believe Posit anticipates kind of two different migrations of users. One comes from the RStudio perspective and the other comes from a VS Code perspective. Now, this completion that you're seeing, there is code completion. There are suggestions that are built into Positron itself, but this one that we're seeing, I think that's coming from GitHub Copilot. So they do have this. They do have some nice features here, so you can snooze it. I wish I could snooze it for more than 5 minutes, but if you want to snooze it for longer than 5 minutes, you can just uncheck what you get your suggestions with, and then we don't have to worry about that anymore. Sorry, where was I with this? So library psych, and I'm going to load in. There's again, if you just kind of wait on it, there's more information. I love the feedback that we're getting out of the things that you might be interested in accessing. And so that's just slick. That's very slick, and it's very nice. It's going to take a little while to kind of find where stuff is. So I loaded, there we go, there's a variables tab. So I loaded the BFI data. BFI data set is actually, okay, so this is interesting. So in RStudio, if I would have loaded in the BFI object, it also might come in as unevaluated, but within the RStudio IDE, if I double click that, try to access it, it'll pop up and I'll be able to view it, and it now becomes, it's now recognized within the session itself. So this looks like it's probably not going to be recognized until I do something. So I'm just going to ask for the mean of a variable in there, and then that loads it in. So again, that's a little bit different. Now, one of the things that people are going to love, I know my students would love this, is the information that you get upon viewing when you're looking at things like data objects. So this table that we're seeing, why does it start with 61617? So that index number is really weird. I'm not sure why it's showing that. I'm not sure if I'm at, no, I'm not at 61,000. That must just come in red like that. That's interesting. Anyway, so people are going to love the kind of spreadsheet feel of the new data editor. I'm a little concerned about it just because in my field, one of the biggest threats that I see and I've seen and I know happens is just data integrity. So, you know, this term data scientist, it's used in a very global sense and it applies to lots and lots of different people. It might carry a little more cachet and status than it probably should. There's people with training in my discipline who are in data science applications, but they don't have good, I don't even know how to say this. but they don't necessarily have the best data management practices. And so one of the, I don't want to impugn anybody, but so one of the kind of dark side of the force seductions to people in my field are spreadsheets. So like Yoda said to Luke, that it's not more powerful, it's easier, it's quicker. And so people in my discipline who might even be in data science applications, but they don't. It's not the component. It's not the kind of central thing that they do for work. They're in meetings and they're leading other people, but they might have some data assignments that are part of what they do, or they're expected to, help out on a team. So if they're known, for example, as an industrial psychologist, even if you don't day-to-day work with data, we have a reputation within the broader field of psychology as being people that generally are okay with data. So you might, on a team, you might get thrown some data things. They're like, well, you deal with this. You're an industrial psychologist. You can handle it. And the seduction of the dark side of the force with spreadsheets is just quicker and easier, and people like them and they want to deal with them. And they're just dangerous. So we'll see if there's any danger to this. My concern about this would be any sort of alteration that we do to the data itself that isn't tracked, isn't scripted, and that you may have some difficulty in recapturing or reconstructing. That being said, people are going to love this. So Kulas necessarily doesn't. Kulas is a little worried, but people, not Kulas, are going to love it. You get these visual representations with some interactivity in terms of the frequency distribution. So you can get a sense here of the values of these different variables. So I have, if you want a little more information, there's this button here that gives you more or less information. It's a histogram or a frequency distribution. It is nice that it says how many missing values. This is something that's important to know. It's something that you'd probably look at yourself, but it's nice to have. There's a minimum and a maximum. So this is there's something in the psych package called describe, and I use it quite often. And other than the histogram, you're going to see a lot of information kind of repeated here. Okay, so we just saw something that I was curious about. So in RStudio, if you ask for a summary or you ask for some information to be presented, the information is going to come out relative to the size of your console, of your output window. And so we saw that happen here too in Positron. So if I wanted a nice table, I would have to rerun this command with a wider console, and then I see everything together. So we see the missing, where's the missing? I thought they had missing in this. Oh, missing is inferred. So missing is 2784 minus, what do we have, 28. So 2800 rows, there's for the variable A1, there's 2784 valid cases. So that means that 16 are missing. So if we took a look at the data itself, and then you see the minimum and maximum, you see the median. So again, it's just kind of, only reason I ran that is to show that there's similar information that's actually presented here, but it's nicer. The thing that I'm afraid of a little bit is some of the filtering capabilities. So if we were to filter based on, let's say, A4, and it's a little slow, and I haven't done this, so I'm not sure about the capabilities or how we're supposed to interact with this. I don't know why it's not. Okay, what's going on here? I want to select the column, but I can't select the column. Maybe I need to select the column first, then try a filter. There we go. So again, there's some navigation issues here, but let's just say is less than, and we'll see if it's less than 3. Apply the filter, and I'm not sure. It looks like that probably did no. Well, how do we get that to work? So my concern with the filtering is if someone were to go, and I'll need to verify, I'll have to verify this in the interceding week here, but my concern would be if someone were to apply a filter as you normally would within a spreadsheet, and then did a save over. So if I did a save over this data object, whether or not that data object would reflect the filtering, which I hope it doesn't. So that's not something that we want to happen, because that's one of the ways in which data gets messed up in my field very frequently, because people love spreadsheets. Now I can't get it to work because I would need to explore that a little bit more in terms of how the filtering actually works. But people are going to love it. On its face, I'm not a huge fan, but I'm not necessarily concerned. I would be concerned again if it were possible to do filtering and then save the object subsequent to the filtering, because that's this kind of interacting with the interactive spreadsheet kind of capabilities of the data. Now, I'm guessing that that's not the case, because in our studio you can also do some sorting. At least I'm not sure about filtering, but it doesn't have any consequence to the data object itself. So that's something that I'll check over the course of the next week, and I'll get back to you on that. What else do we want to see? There are these extensions, as I said, are something that people really seem to like. There is a Git tab, which is neat because it shows you what you've done. It tracks kind of the commits that what are called commits, and that's just kind of local saves that you've done. It shows you the commits, and it shows you any branching and merging of branches on projects that you work on. It gives a Git diagram if you're familiar with those, and so that's really neat. It looks like there are some really neat capabilities for connecting to different types of databases, and let's see if I can find where that is. I don't think it's. Oh, I've lost it in terms of where it actually is. The element that most people, I think, are probably going to be interested in is the Posit assistant again, and on that you're probably going to want your own. You're probably going to want your own subscription to an AI agent on that, and you should be able to connect. Like I said, most people, I believe, use Claude. What else do we want to do within this? There is a terminal where we should do a Quarto document. Let's do that. So before we drop off here, let's go ahead and save this first. There's not much here, but it will show what it looks like within the folder space, and we'll just call this PFI. We really didn't do much there, did we? You also get a lot of feedback in kind of a different format. So I'm seeing a lot of these pop-ups, and I'm not sure what to relate these to from something like an RStudio perspective. And so I have no idea what this means, but I do know like I said, that they're generally speaking within this IDE, there's a lot more information that is hidden when you get something like this, a message like this. Sometimes it's just slowing down and kind of hovering over that element. So let's go ahead and create a new Quarto document, see if we can find it. Oh, so they don't, I think we saw this last time as well. They don't This is different than RStudio. So RStudio, creating a new document, it would give you boilerplate information, not just the YAML. So there would be content in here. And one thing that I do want to check while people are here is I want to kind of see some of the preview things that this IDE is supposed to do in terms of images, and also what they call LaTeX. So LaTeX, one of the things that we do with LaTeX is we can specify things like mathematical expressions and numerals and symbols and things like that. Now, there should be, let's get rid of this. I wonder if that's interfering. There should be, I've seen it before. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it now. But I have seen a Quarto preview window down here that shows things like equations and shows things like images. Again, like I said, I'm just the navigation of this. Man, the navigation is going to take a while to figure that out. Now, I don't even know what to search for to get it, honestly. But at some point, I saw there was information down here that was relevant. There it is. Okay. So it was just kind of my desire to not be cluttered. So here is Quarto. There we go. So the equation is actually showing up. So the equation that I typed is showing up. We should be able to do, and again, you normally would be a little more elaborate than this, but theta should also show up as a Greek symbol. And then you're seeing, depending on where my cursor is, you're seeing that immediate feedback down here in terms of the equation itself. And that, I can see that being useful. That kind of neat. What we're in here is called the File Explorer, and the File Explorer tells you what's in your folder space. And right now we only have the one R script. Let's go ahead and see if we can render this. Now, you can render it through the terminal. We should be able to also render it through this preview button. What do we want to call this? And I'm still getting this really weird error here. So I had to hit that preview twice, and I'm not sure why. But you're seeing in my file space here, one of the things I do like, I think it's neat, is they give feedback in terms of icons, in terms of the file type. I know students, especially, increasingly students are using Macs, and I know a lot of developers use Macs, and a lot of Posit people use Macs as well. But the Mac tradition doesn't seem to be as reliant or used to file extensions. So I frequently talk about QMDs or HTML files or R scripts. But they have these nice icons next to each of them. And so the HTML icon is here, the Quarto icon is here, and that's telling you what file type is within your space. And that's great. I love that. I appreciate that. Now, Quarto is supposed to give previews of images as well upon hover, kind of like it's doing with these equations. But I frequently include images that are taken from the internet, and it's probably not best practice, but let's see if we can get Rudolph, since it's almost Christmas Eve here. I do like these stop motion claymation animation. Oh, there's Rudolph and his girlfriend there. I forget her name. I saw it was like a Antiques Roadshow type thing, and this guy had, I think they were images from one of these specials, one of these 1960s claymation specials, and it was just kind of sad because they're kind of ratty and I don't know. It looks like they're not going to be clean. So exclamation point, square bracket, and then parentheses, and then the hover. The hover again. Theoretically, there's going to be a Quarto image that shows up down here, but I'm not getting those with my internet images. Now, if I were to render this again, and again, the rendering is operating a little different than it does in both RStudio and Jupyter Lab. So Jupyter Lab, the preview is going to be a live document, and it's going to reflect what we do in the left-hand column here. So if I added another section, and I was in Jupyter Lab on a preview, my expectation would be that my HTML file would mirror that. The preview in Positron, as far as I can tell, it's operating more as a hard render. So it's actually creating this new HTML file. Boy, that error. I'm going to have to look up that error when we get out of here. And you can also start to see kind of some of the just overwhelmingness of it. I think it's just me, and I got to get used to it. Again, I would love Quarto, or I would love Posit to kind of make a declaration of this is what we think is awesome, and you need to use it. I want to hear that bold statement, and then I'll go ahead and do it. I also kind of want to hear the motivation, so I want to make sure that this isn't market driven because I think that it's not something that. Well, again, I'm not going to get into it. Okay, so let's try to put an image in our directory here and see if that shows up because I haven't tried this, but my supposition is that a local image might display down here in the environment itself, whereas the internet ones don't seem to want to. So we'll do Frosty. I think was there a claymation Frosty? Wasn't there? I think there was. This is going to be scary, isn't it? No. I'm thinking of this guy. This is Burl. Oh no, what is that? I'm all over the place, aren't I? This is Burl Ives. Now, I love Burl Ives. I love his voice. But they made him look like Burl Ives, too. So, I don't know if that's a tribute or if that's a bad thing. But that narrator guy was Burl Ives. And the snowman looks like Burl Ives. So that is not Frosty. We're going to call him Burl. So where the heck, what's my folder space here? Where am I? Users playing. I don't remember doing a playing thing. So I'm going to go back to Burl Ives. And I'm looking for playing. Is there a playing? There is a playing. Okay, so, it's a web.p. So, sorry, Burl. We're going to look for a different image. Those IVPs, those WebP image types, sometimes they're a little tricky. So I'm not interested in saving that. We don't need that level of complication tonight. So we'll just try a good old JPEG. I'm going to call it Burl. Call it Burl Ives to give him his full representation and respect. And normally if we were going to populate that with a lot, I probably would create an image folder and put it within that image folder. And again, you see that icon next to the image type. I like that. So there are definitely elements that I like and I appreciate, and probably just need to give it a little more time. But again, just the visual overwhelmingness of this, I'm gonna probably see if I can set up my environment like the Albert guy recommended. And it's giving me autocompletes there. I love that. There you go. So it is local. Okay. So that image preview is fine, but it's only working for local images. It's not working for the way I like to do images, which is just kind of nab them from the internet. And that's probably not great practice because they go out of date. They actually those links will be dead at points too. Okay, I'm way over. I'm sorry, people. So Positron again, kind of mixed emotions on it. I there's enough there's enough that I don't love where I would probably wait a little bit unless I hear from Positron and or unless I hear from Posit and they say we're the experts, you trust us, and you love everything we've done so far, which I do. And they say we think that you should use this. This is how you should be operating when you're a data scientist. I would probably just jump right on. But absent that, I'm going to give it a little more time, and I'll probably stay within RStudio. Uh, there is enough here that's intriguing that I'm interested in kind of playing with it a little more, particularly the feedback and the auto completions, even absent any sort of AI assistant. It's just slick. It's very nice. There's a lot of information. It's too much information, but that level of information I love. The one thing I need is I just need to set up my environment that's more reflective of what I want to do. So a skin would be nice. So something like a psychology skin. So, it's like, oh, you scared psychologists. So you're not overwhelmed. Here's your environment. Everything's there. Functionality's still there, but it just looks a little safer. It looks a little cleaner. Um, I guess that's kind of probably what I'm waiting for, what I'm looking for. Okay, cool. So Positron, again, the company is fantastic. Very happy with everything they've provided, and I'm just not sure I'm ready to take the leap quite yet. I'll try to put some of these thoughts into a more coherent kind of perspective for next week's recap, and then also I'm gonna play with that filtering capability and see if there's any sort of spreadsheety danger stuff there that I don't like, and if so, I'll make sure to communicate that. I doubt it. I'm sure everything's kosher. So, all right. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, everyone, and see you next week.